The Sterling estate glistened like something out of a fairy tale, perched on the cliffs above the Pacific Ocean. Sunlight spilled across marble floors and caught on the diamonds that dripped from Amara's ears. A string quartet played something soft and slow, but the music barely reached her through the hum in her ears. She stood before a mirror in the bridal suite, the satin of her gown hugging every curve, flawless makeup hiding the storm behind her eyes. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted the veil. "You look like a dream," said Lana, her best and only friend from the past who'd stayed close. Lana stepped forward and gently adjusted the necklace around Amara's neck. "You sure about this?" Amara didn't answer right away. Was she sure? She was marrying Damon Sterling, the billionaire CEO of Sterling Enterprises, a man every woman in the city would kill to call hers. He was powerful, respected, devastatingly handsome in that sharp, clean way that made him look like he'd stepped off the cover of Forbes. He was also cold, possessive, and nothing like the man who had charmed her in candlelit restaurants and whispered promises in her ear when she was still working late-night shifts as a waitress, barely scraping by. But how could she say no now? The dress, the estate, the guest list filled with politicians and celebrities. It was all too late to undo. Amara turned to Lana, her voice steady despite the scream in her chest. "This is what I've worked for. Security. Stability. It's not love," Lana said gently. Love. That elusive, dangerous word. No, it wasn't love. Not anymore. Maybe it never had been. But it was survival. And Amara had learned the hard way what it meant to survive. The ceremony was beautiful, like something out of a movie. White roses lined the aisle, and the sea stretched behind them as Amara walked toward the man who owned half the city. And now her. Damon smiled for the cameras, held her hand just tight enough to hurt. But no one else noticed. They only saw the perfect couple, the fairy tale ending. When the officiant asked if she would take Damon Sterling as her husband, Amara paused. Long, dangerous pause. The wind picked up. Then she said, "I do." Applause. Kisses. Champagne flutes raised in the air. But deep inside, something small and soft within her curled up and died. The mansion was quiet in the mornings. Too quiet. Amara woke early, long before Damon. It had become a habit, one she hadn't meant to form. She padded barefoot across the cold marble floor, the silence pressing in like a second skin. Breakfast was already laid out by the housekeeper. Fresh berries, croissants, coffee brewed to Damon's precise liking. But none of it tasted like anything. She sat at the long glass table alone, staring out at the ocean view through towering windows. The sea used to bring her comfort. Now it just looked like another thing she couldn't reach. The staff greeted her politely but kept their eyes down. Damon didn't like them being too familiar. No one spoke unless spoken to. No one asked questions. That was the rule. By the time Damon came downstairs, he was already dressed. Perfect suit, no tie, sleeves rolled slightly. His presence filled the room like a storm. He kissed her cheek, just enough pressure to leave a mark. "You look tired," he said. "Didn't sleep." "I slept fine," she lied. He nodded, sipping his coffee. "I have a meeting downtown, then dinner with investors. Be ready by 7. Amara blinked. "Dinner? You'll wear the navy dress I picked. The one with the neckline that flatters your shoulders." He didn't look at her when he said it. Just set his cup down and walked away. Amara waited until he left, the roar of the engine echoing off the stone walls. Then she finally breathed. The navy dress still had the tags on it. She'd stopped choosing her own clothes weeks ago. First it was a few suggestions from Damon. Then reminders. Then packages with notes. "This will look better. Trust me." It wasn't just her closet. He had slowly rearranged her world. Friends stopped calling. Lana's texts became more spaced out, until they stopped altogether. Damon said it was for her privacy. For peace. You've outgrown that life, he told her. You're a sterling now. Trophy. An ornament. An asset. Later that day, she opened a book she had never finished. A novel she used to carry in her purse when she still rode the subway. A photo fell out. Her and Lana at a street food festival, both of them laughing, sauce on their cheeks. She pressed the picture to her chest, heart aching. The house had everything: art, beauty, silence. But no warmth. And every day, Amara wondered if she had made the biggest mistake of her life. The gala sparkled with champagne flutes and polite smiles. Amara stood beside Damon, her arm tucked into his as cameras flashed in rapid bursts. She'd worn the navy dress. The one he chose. The one that hugged her frame perfectly. Strategically modest and expensive-looking. Damon leaned in, murmuring against her cheek. Smile wider. They're watching. She obeyed. Inside, the grand ballroom pulsed with low jazz and laughter that didn't quite reach the eyes. Waiters circled with trays of hors d'oeuvres Amara couldn't pronounce. Every corner was occupied by power. CEOs, socialites, political figures. Everyone seemed to know Damon. Everyone seemed to admire him. They called her lucky. She smiled, said thank you, nodded when they mentioned how radiant she looked. As if she were a prize he had won. A well-dressed reward. In the ladies' room, she stared at herself in the mirror. The woman staring back was beautiful, yes, but also tired. Haunted. The gleam in her eye from a year ago had dulled, replaced by something too still. The door creaked open. A woman in red walked in. Older, elegant, confident. "You're Amara," she said, voice low and knowing. Amara turned, startled. "Yes." The woman stepped closer, fixing her lipstick in the mirror. "I knew Damon once. A long time ago. Before the suits, before the charm hardened." Amara stiffened. "You're an ex." "Not quite," the woman said with a smirk. "But close enough to warn you." "Was. He loves power. And you, my dear, are just the latest thing he thinks he can control." Amara's breath caught. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I was once where you are, smiling through clenched teeth, thinking I could change him." She capped her lipstick and met Amara's eyes. "Don't waste years trying." Before Amara could speak, the woman disappeared back into the party. That night, in the car on the way home, Damon didn't ask her how she was. He talked business. About mergers, competition, influence. Amara sat in silence, her hands curled into fists in her lap. Later, in their bedroom, she stood before the mirror and slowly peeled off the dress. Her skin felt foreign under the glittering lights. Her reflection looked perfect, flawless even. But something inside her had begun to crack. She opened her drawer and pulled out the photo again, her and Lana. That version of her had been messy, loud, vibrant, real. She pressed it to her chest and whispered into the empty room. "Come back." Whether she meant herself or Lana, she wasn't sure. But she knew this much. Something had to change. The Sterling estate was silent that morning. Too silent. No clinking of breakfast china. No soft classical music from the in-wall speakers. Not even footsteps on the marble floors. Just the hum of power behind walls so thick they silenced everything but Amara's thoughts. She sat at the edge of the bed, wrapped in a silk robe that felt more like a costume than comfort. Damon had already left for a meeting. He hadn't said goodbye. It wasn't new. She wandered through the house, barefoot, letting her fingers brush along cold surfaces. The glass railing, the stainless steel counters, the sleek leather of furniture designed more for aesthetics than rest. There were no photos of her family, no mementos, only curated art and sleek lines. It looked like a showroom, beautiful and sterile. At the library door she paused. Damon's sanctuary. She knew better than to go inside, but today, something compelled her. She stepped through. The room smelled like expensive paper and cedarwood polish. A mahogany desk sat under a wide window. Everything was in place. Everything always was. She walked to the bookshelf, her fingers tracing leather-bound spines. Titles about finance, power, control. Then, tucked beside a stack of legal journals, she saw it. Her journal. The one she had hidden months ago. The one he said he hadn't seen. Her breath hitched as she pulled it free. The leather cover was worn, the pages still slightly bent from the night she'd cried into them. She flipped it open. His handwriting was inside. He had read it. All of it. Red ink underlined her words. I feel like I'm fading. Beside it, in his neat script. Melodramatic. Another passage. Sometimes I miss who I used to be. He'd written. You should be grateful. Her vision blurred. So he had found it. He had read her pain and annotated it like a report card. Cold. Clinical. She backed away, heart thudding in her chest. Later that day, she confronted him. She waited until dinner, when he was swirling his wine and talking about an acquisition in Singapore. I found my journal, she said quietly. He paused. Did you? You read it. He didn't flinch. You left it in my house. It wasn't yours to read. He met her eyes then, sharp and calm. When you married me, everything became mine. Her mouth went dry. That's not love. He tilted his head. It's reality. She stood slowly, her chair scraping softly against the polished floor. I want to visit Lana, she said. I need to see her. No. You can't stop me. I can and I will. His tone was final. Izzy. Amara didn't respond. She walked away, fists clenched at her sides. In the safety of her bathroom, she turned on the faucet and stared into the mirror. Water rushed down the marble sink, but she didn't hear it. She saw herself. And she saw the cage. Had golden bars, yes. But it was a cage all the same. And for the first time she admitted it to herself, she was trapped. But not for long. It was nearly midnight when Amara slipped out of bed, careful not to wake Damon. His breathing was even. His body heavy with the weight of power and wine. She moved like a whisper, barefoot and silent, the cold floor grounding her every step. Downstairs, the house was cloaked in shadows. She passed the grand piano, the silent chandelier, the vase of fresh orchids that Rosa replaced every 3 days. Everything in its perfect place. Except her. In the kitchen, she opened the back door and stepped outside. The garden stretched like a curated paradise. Tall hedges, sculpted trees, a stone path that led to a small greenhouse. She followed it. The glass house had always been her sanctuary, the one thing Damon never touched. It was too plain, too sentimental. He once called it a poor girl's fantasy. But to her it was freedom. She lit the small lantern and sat on the wooden bench, letting the silence wrap around her like a shawl. The stars blinked through the glass roof, and for a moment, it felt like the world was still hers to dream in. Then she heard it. A soft knock, barely audible, on the back gate. Her heart jumped. She stood frozen. Amara, a voice whispered. It's me, Luna. She rushed to open the gate. Her best friend slipped through, hoodie pulled low, eyes wide with worry. What are you doing here? Amara whispered. You stopped replying, Lana said. I got scared. I had to. He checks everything. Lana pulled her into a hug, tight and trembling. Are you okay? No, Amara said honestly. But I'm still standing. They sat in the greenhouse, the lantern between them. I've been looking into someone, Lana said quietly. A lawyer. Her name's Sophia DeWitt. She helps women get out. Quietly. Safely. Amara swallowed. You think I need a lawyer? I think you need an exit plan. Silence stretched between them. I'm scared, Amara admitted. You should be, Lana said. But you should also be free. Tears welled in Amara's eyes. I don't even know who I am anymore. Lana squeezed her hand. Then let's figure it out. Together. They talked until the stars began to fade and the first traces of dawn painted the sky. Lana slipped away before the staff stirred, leaving behind a burner phone wrapped in tissue paper. Just in case, she had said. Amara hid it under a floor tile in the greenhouse. That morning, Damon didn't ask where she'd been. He rarely asked anything that didn't benefit him. But something in her gaze had shifted. He noticed it. The way she held his stare a second too long. The way her voice no longer flinched. He smiled at her over breakfast, calculating. And she smiled back. Soft, unreadable. Let him think she was folding. Let him believe the cage still held. But the first crack had already formed. And freedom was no longer a fantasy. It was a plan. The days that followed were quieter than usual, as if the estate itself sensed something shifting. Damon had left for a business trip to New York, and for the first time in weeks, Amara had the house to herself. It should have brought relief. But instead, it highlighted just how empty her world had become. The silence was different now. Not peaceful but loaded. Every creak of the walls, every ticking clock, reminded her of the life she was pretending to live. A wife in luxury. A woman adored. A carefully curated lie. She wandered through the house that afternoon, barefoot and thoughtful. Each room felt like a stage set, beautiful, cold, and impersonal. Imported vases, framed modern art, leather-bound books that had never been read. A life built to impress, not to comfort. In the master bedroom, she opened the walk-in closet. His suits lined the wall like a soldier's uniforms. Crisp, dark, identical. Power in wool and silk. She turned to her own side. Dresses she never chose, heels selected by stylists, jewelry too expensive to touch without an escort. She stepped back and closed the door. Downstairs, Rosa found her in the kitchen, staring at a kettle she hadn't turned on. "Senora," Rosa said gently. "Do you want tea?" Amara blinked, then nodded. "Yes, please. Thank you." Rosa began to move about the kitchen with quiet efficiency. Her eyes occasionally flicking toward Amara. She said nothing, but there was something unspoken in her gaze. Something that made Amara pause. "Rosa," she said softly. "Do you ever feel afraid here?" Rosa didn't answer immediately. She poured hot water into the teacup, set the saucer gently in front of Amara. "I've worked in many homes," she said finally. "Some are full of noise. Some are full of love. This house is full of silence." Amara felt her throat tighten. "That's not an answer." Rosa looked at her, then really looked. "You already know the answer, Senora. You just needed to hear it out loud." Beat passed. "I might be leaving," Amara whispered. "Soon." Rosa didn't flinch. "Then leave well. And don't come back." That night, Amara sat on the floor of the greenhouse and powered on the burner phone. One message blinked on the screen. From Lana. "Sophia's ready when you are. She can meet you next week. Private office. No paper trail. Just say the word. Amara stared at the message for a long time. Then she typed back. Tell her I'm ready. She turned off the phone and buried it back under the tile. The plan was beginning. And for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't feel like defeat. Felt like preparation. The morning Damon returned from New York. The air turned heavy again. Amara woke before dawn. Her body alert even before her mind caught up. She dressed in silence and went downstairs to prepare coffee, hands trembling slightly as she moved through the motions. By 7 a.m., his car pulled into the driveway. He entered the house with his usual commanding presence, briefcase in one hand, Bluetooth still in his ear. He didn't greet her, not with words, not even with a glance. He moved past her, as if she were another piece of furniture in his museum of wealth. Amara followed him into the living room. You were gone for 5 days, she said evenly. Damon didn't look up from his phone. And I called you. You never answered. He finally raised his head, his expression flat. I was busy. You know how this works, Amara. Don't start with the dramatics. I just wanted to talk, she said. To know how you were. To feel like I mattered. Damon's eyes narrowed. Don't pull this insecure nonsense with me. You matter because I say you matter. Because I gave you this life. There it was again, that poison he delivered so smoothly, always cloaked in logic and superiority. I didn't ask for this life, Amara said quietly. He laughed short and sharp. Of course you did. Maybe not in words, but you wanted it. You wore the dresses. You smiled for the cameras. You played the part. I played the part to survive. That silenced him, for a moment. Then his tone turned colder, calculated. Be careful what you say, Amara. You're not as untouchable as you think. She stood her ground. Neither are you. He stepped forward, close enough that she could smell the cologne she used to love. Don't forget who made you, he said through gritted teeth. Without me, you're just a girl with a tragic past and no future. Amara didn't flinch. Without you, I'm finally free. The moment hung between them like a blade. He scoffed, stepped back and turned away. You're emotional. You need rest. No, she said firmly. I need peace. And I'll find it, with or without you. He left the room, muttering something under his breath. Amara stood still, her heart pounding, her hands clammy, but her spine straight. Later that day she went back to the greenhouse. She lifted the tile, pulled out the burner phone, and texted Lana. It's time. Book the meeting with Sophia. I'm done pretending. She looked around the space filled with dying plants and artificial sunlight and felt something crack inside her. This was no longer her home. It never had been. And now, she was done breaking herself to fit inside a life that was never meant for her. The next morning, Amara left before sunrise, her heart thudding with both fear and fierce resolve. Dressed in plain jeans, a hoodie and sneakers, she looked nothing like the woman the tabloids had once labeled Damon Sterling's beautiful mystery. She slipped through the servants' entrance and into Lana's waiting car without anyone noticing. Everything packed? Lana asked, eyes scanning the rearview mirror. Amara nodded. Just essentials. Nothing he'd notice missing right away. Lana didn't speak for a while, focused on navigating the city streets as dawn stretched gold across the skyline. Then softly, You sure you're ready? I'm not sure about anything, Amara admitted. Except that I can't go back. That answer was enough. They arrived at a nondescript building tucked behind a flower shop on a quiet street. Sophia DeWitt's office was discreet, No logos, no loud signage, just a plaque that read, DW Legal Consulting. But inside it was warm and intentional. Soft light, rich wood, the scent of lavender and something calming Amara couldn't name. Sophia DeWitt stood as they entered. She was in her early 40s, with cool eyes and the kind of confidence that couldn't be faked. She extended her hand to Amara without hesitation. "I've heard a lot about you," Sophia said. "You're braver than you know." Amara smiled faintly, her grip firm. "I think I'm just tired of being afraid." They sat, and Lana remained close but quiet. Sophia wasted no time. "I've helped women like you before. With powerful partners. Manipulative ones who hide behind money and lawyers. But Damon Sterling is a different kind of monster." "I know," Amara said. "But I also know he's not invincible." Sophia's lips curved slightly. "Good. We'll start with protection. A legal plan, documentation of your treatment, evidence to establish a pattern of coercive control. And you'll need a safe house. A real one. I have some journal entries," Amara offered. "Texts. And a recording." He didn't know. Sophia's brow lifted in approval. "That's a good start." As the meeting unfolded, Amara realized how much groundwork Sophia had already laid. Connections with advocacy groups, reporters, and even tech contacts who could trace accounts Damon tried to hide. Every piece had been quietly forming long before today. "You're not alone," Sophia said as their session ended. "Even when it feels like it." Amara left with a new phone, a burner number, and the beginning of a legal escape route. Her heart still raced, but this time it wasn't from fear. It was from hope. Back at Lana's car, Amara exhaled deeply. "What now?" Lana asked. "We plan," Amara said. "We wait. And when the time comes, we move fast." Lana nodded. "He's going to lose it." "I know," Amara whispered. "But for once, I'll be ready." As they pulled away from the curb, Amara didn't look back. She didn't need to. Her past was behind her, and her future had finally begun to take shape. The days that followed were a blur of coordination and caution. Amara moved like a ghost through her own life, still sleeping in the guest room, still pretending, but now every step was calculated. Every glance from Damon analyzed. Every word exchanged recorded in her mind. Sophia advised her not to tip her hand. "He'll know something's off," she had warned over the burner phone. "But don't give him a reason to act before we're ready." So Amara played the part. She smiled when necessary, nodded when expected, and made herself smaller just like she used to. Just enough to keep Damon disinterested. The illusion worked. He barely noticed her, lost in a haze of meetings, phone calls, and the launch of another luxury real estate venture. But behind the scenes, Sophia's plan was unfolding. Lana quietly transferred small amounts of money into a secure account in Amara's name. Funds Sophia helped launder from old savings Amara had secretly stashed away. Legal filings were being prepared. Financial records combed for inconsistencies and leverage. Every thread was being pulled slowly, methodically. And then Amara made her first move. One afternoon, while Damon was out, she unlocked the cabinet in his home office. She had learned the passcode months ago. His birthday, of course, and inside she found exactly what she needed. Ledgers, contracts, documents he hadn't digitized. Among them, she found a signed non-disclosure agreement. It wasn't hers. It was someone else's. Another woman's name. The silence Damon had purchased. Amara's stomach churned as she read the clauses. Everything screamed coercion. And it wasn't the only one. There were others. Some handwritten. Some half-shredded. all damning. She took photos of everything with her burner phone, heart pounding the entire time. When Damon returned home later, she was in the garden, clipping roses. "Dinner at 8, he said, barely looking at her. She smiled. Of course. That night, as she lay in bed, she sent the images to Sophia with a single text. "Found the silence he bought. Time to make some noise." The response came within minutes. "This changes everything. Let me work." The next morning, Damon was gone early. Something about an emergency meeting. Amara didn't care. She had stopped asking weeks ago. She met Lana in the kitchen, handed her a flash drive with copies of everything, and hugged her tightly. "Be safe," Lana said, her voice thick with worry. "You too," Amara replied. "We're almost there." Later that afternoon, Sophia called with a new tone in her voice, one Amara hadn't heard before. "Triumph. We have enough to file," Sophia said. "Enough to go public if we want. The only question now is, how loud do you want this to be?" Amara stared out the window of her room. Rain traced delicate lines down the glass, like the world was preparing for something heavy. She thought of the other women behind those NDAs. The ones who never got to leave. "Loud," Amara whispered. "Loud enough that he can never silence anyone again." It happened on a Tuesday. The house was unusually quiet, the kind of stillness that hinted at a brewing storm. Damon had left for an overnight business trip, Vegas, he'd said, though Amara no longer believed a word that came from his lips. She had waited for this moment for weeks. Not just for him to be gone, but for everything else to fall perfectly into place. The funds hidden, the documents collected, the escape route mapped out down to the minute. Lana pulled up to the back gate just after noon in a nondescript sedan. She didn't honk. She didn't wave. She just waited. Amara was already packed. One single duffel bag. One burner phone. One envelope containing her fake ID, new name, and legal protections from Sophia's network. She didn't cry as she slipped out the back door. Didn't pause to say goodbye to the house she'd once dreamed of, now just a gilded cage. Her heels clicked softly on the stone path as she walked away from the mansion, from the ghosts, from the lies. Lana opened the passenger door and gave her a tight nod. "You ready?" Amara slid into the seat, pulled the door shut and whispered, "Let's go." The car eased into motion, winding through back streets and service roads, eventually merging onto the highway. Amara watched the estate shrink in the rearview mirror until it vanished entirely. She didn't exhale until they crossed county lines. They drove for hours, saying little. Amara kept her eyes forward, her hands still. The ache in her chest wasn't fear. It was freedom, and the strange, raw emptiness that followed. Eventually, Lana pulled off the road into a small motel just outside the city limits. It was discreet, a safe handoff point before Amara moved on to her first safe house. Inside the modest room, Lana sat across from her at a small table, sipping bad coffee from a paper cup. "He'll come looking for you," she said quietly. "I know. You think you're ready. I have to be." Lana reached into her bag and handed over a slim folder. "Sophia's arranged everything. You've got a new phone number, a new name, a lawyer on standby. And me whenever you need." Amara looked down at the folder, her fingers brushing over her new identity. "Thank you," she said, her voice thick. "You saved yourself," Lana replied. "I just gave you a ride." That night, Amara lay on the stiff motel bed staring at the ceiling, the silence so deep it rang in her ears. For the first time in years, she didn't hear Damon's footsteps outside her door. She didn't brace for the click of a lock, or the sharp call of her name. She was alone. Terrifyingly, beautifully alone. Before she fell asleep, she opened her journal and wrote 5 words. I am no one's prisoner. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't have a grand plan beyond survival. But for the first time she had the chance to choose. Sophia DeWitt's office sat in a quiet, unmarked building downtown. The only indication it was even occupied was a bronze plaque beside the door. DW Legal Consulting. Inside, the space was warm and calm, with soft lighting and the faint scent of lavender. Amara sat across from the woman who might help her reclaim her life. Sophia was in her early 40s, sharp-eyed and composed. She read Amara carefully, not with judgment, but with understanding born from experience. You're not the first woman I've helped walk away from a man like Damon Sterling, Sophia said gently. But you need to understand something before we move forward. I'm listening, Amara replied, her hands clenched in her lap. He will fight. Not because he loves you but because you were his possession. And men like that do not like losing control. Amara nodded slowly. I already know that. Good, Sophia said. 'Cause this will not be clean or easy. He'll try to ruin your name, freeze your assets, possibly even file a lawsuit to scare you back. Are you prepared for that? I'm prepared for war, Amara whispered. As long as it leads to peace. Sophia smiled faintly. Then let's begin. They spent the next 2 hours building a strategy. Emergency protection orders, financial tracing, a safe house address for immediate relocation. Sophia had contacts with media outlets too. Reporters who were tired of glossing over powerful men's sins. If Damon pushed too far, his empire could burn. But it had to be played right. You don't strike first, Sophia advised. You let him come to you. Let him show the world who he really is. Amara left the office with a new name, a legal plan in motion, and a temporary ID. It felt surreal, walking into the sunlight with a bag of secrets and a map to a new life. But her moment of peace was brief. That evening, Lana dropped her off at a safe house apartment Sophia's network had arranged. It was small but clean, tucked into a neighborhood Damon would never think to search. Amara curled up on the couch, listening to the rain tap against the window. Then her burner phone buzzed. Unknown number. One message. You think you can run from me. You forget who made you. Come home before I make you regret everything. Her blood turned to ice. He knew. Whether it was Rosa, a staff member, or pure suspicion, Damon had figured it out. And he wasn't begging. He was warning. Amara stared at the message, her heart pounding, but not breaking. Not anymore. She replied with only 3 words. I'm not afraid. Then she powered off the phone. She was done living under his shadow. And if Damon Sterling wanted a war, he was about to learn just how dangerous a woman with nothing left to lose could be. The next morning, Amara met with Sophia and a journalist named Nia Chen in a discreet cafe far from the Sterling estate. Nia was young, sharp, and fearless, known for digging into high-profile scandals others were too afraid to touch. I've been watching Sterling Enterprises for a while, Nia said, setting a voice recorder gently on the table. Whispers, lawsuits, NDAs. No one's spoken out until now. Amara swallowed hard. Her palms were slick, her chest tight. I'm ready. They spent the morning going over details. How Damon had isolated her, manipulated her, gaslit her into believing she was unworthy and ungrateful. Amara provided texts, recordings she'd secretly saved, and notes from her journal documenting every instance of psychological control. By the end, Nia looked shaken. This goes deeper than I thought, she said. It's not just you. There's a pattern here. Sophia nodded. And we'll make sure the public sees it. They planned a strategic release. An exclusive exposé accompanied by video clips and statements from other former employees Sophia had quietly reached out to. Nia would hold the story until the legal team had all safeguards in place. "You won't just be telling your story," Sophia said. "You'll be giving others the courage to tell theirs." Amara felt something powerful stir inside her, something she hadn't felt in months. Purpose. That night, she stayed alone in the apartment, the city humming outside her window. She couldn't sleep. Her body vibrated with tension, but her mind was clear. The story would run in 48 hours. At 3 a.m., her burner phone lit up again. Another number. Another message. "Last chance, Amara. I can erase you with a phone call. Come back before you lose everything." This time she didn't even flinch. She messaged Sophia and Nia. "He's threatening again. Let the story run early." By morning it had begun. The article dropped at 8 a.m. sharp. Headline: "Behind the Sterling Smile. The untold story of Damon Sterling's empire of control." Spread like wildfire. Social media exploded. Hashtags trended. News anchors picked it up within the hour. Amara's name was everywhere, but for the first time it wasn't attached to the image Damon had curated. She wasn't a trophy wife anymore. She was a survivor. Truth-teller. Within hours, more women came forward. Former employees, ex-girlfriends, even a junior partner who had left after being threatened by Damon. Sterling Enterprises released a statement. "We take these allegations seriously." But the damage was already done. Damon tried to call her. He left voicemails. His voice no longer calm, no longer regal. He was unraveling. Amara blocked every number. She stood by the window that night, the city lights flickering below her, and breathed. Not in fear. Not in pain. In freedom. The world finally saw the man behind the empire. And the woman who had dared to bring him down. The fallout hit fast, and it was brutal. Within 24 hours of the article's release, Sterling Enterprises stock began to plummet. Investors scrambled. Board members called emergency meetings. PR firms flooded the media with weak denials. But the internet had already made up its mind. Damon Sterling was no longer a visionary. He was a monster. Amara watched it all unfold from the quiet of her safe house. News anchors dissected her every word. Social media praised her bravery. Women across the country reposted her story, using it as a rallying cry for their own battles. The hashtag I am Amara became a movement. But the attention came with a price. Paparazzi found the cafe where she'd once met Sophia. Bloggers unearthed old photos of Amara in her pre-marriage days, twisting them into rags-to-riches regret stories. Comment sections turned toxic. Trolls called her a gold digger, liar, an actress. Amara didn't respond. She let them talk, let them twist. The truth had already burned through the lies like wildfire. Meanwhile, Damon tried to reclaim the narrative. He released a video statement. Polished suit, calm voice, crocodile smile. He claimed he loved Amara. That she was fragile. That she had misunderstood his actions. A man trying to protect his wife from the pressures of the spotlight. But it was too late. The mask no longer fooled anyone. Sophia smirked as they watched the video. "Textbook narcissism," she said. "And it just validated your entire case." 2 days later, the first lawsuit dropped, filed by a former assistant who had stayed silent for years. Then came 2 more, from women who had signed NDAs and were now petitioning to have them overturned. Damon's empire was bleeding. And Amara. She was rebuilding. Quietly, carefully, but with unwavering resolve. Still, it wasn't easy. At night, the nightmares returned. She'd wake up breathless, imagining Damon standing at the door with that icy stare. During the day, she stayed busy, meeting with Sophia, Lana, and Nia. They laid the foundation for her next chapter: a sealed divorce, a permanent name change, and relocation out of state. But amid the chaos, Amara mourned. Not Damon, but the version of herself who once believed in fairy tales. Who thought that love could be earned with loyalty, that wealth could mean safety. That girl was gone. But in her place stood a woman forged in fire, sharper, wiser, and unbreakable. One quiet evening, Lana brought takeout to the apartment. They sat in silence, watching the city pulse below them. "You know," Lana said, breaking the stillness, "you didn't just survive him. You destroyed the myth of him." Amara looked out the window, her voice steady. "He built an empire on control. I took it down with the truth." Lana raised her drink in a silent toast. Not many could have done that. Amara turned to her with a faint, tired smile. "Maybe not. But I had to lose everything first, to find out what I was really made of." And the world was beginning to see it too. 2 months later, the wind on the coast felt different, gentler, healing. Amara stood barefoot on a small balcony overlooking a sleepy seaside town, the waves below whispering promises of peace. Her hair, now trimmed short and unburdened, danced freely in the breeze. She wasn't Amara Sterling anymore. She was just Amara. The safe house had served its purpose. Now, Sophia's team had relocated her to a protected community under a new identity. The divorce had been finalized quietly, thanks to legal pressure and the public storm. Damon, still reeling from a string of lawsuits and a company in disarray, hadn't dared to fight. He signed the papers. No apologies. No final words. But Amara didn't need closure from a man who never truly saw her. Instead, she focused on building something new, something real. She volunteered at a local women's center twice a week, helping others navigate the trauma she had once been trapped in. Sophia had arranged therapy, and Amara never missed a session. She was slowly peeling back the layers of guilt, fear, and self-doubt that Damon had wrapped around her. Healing was slow, but it was happening. She had started journaling again, not the desperate, chaotic scribbles of her mansion days, but intentional, honest reflections. Dreams. Fragments of stories. Lana suggested she write a memoir. Amara wasn't sure yet, but she filled page after page, no longer afraid of her own voice. One quiet afternoon, a letter arrived. No return address. Handwritten. She hesitated, then opened it. "You cost me everything. Enjoy your freedom while it lasts. E." Her stomach clenched, then settled. She calmly tore the letter in half and fed it to the fireplace. He could scream from the shadows all he wanted. She wasn't his prisoner anymore. That night, she walked alone to the edge of the beach. The ocean roared softly in the distance, its rhythm timeless and comforting. Everything about her life had changed: her name, her home, her future. But for the first time, she felt like she was exactly where she was meant to be. Alone, yes, but not lonely. She didn't crave revenge anymore. Damon's downfall had come, not from a courtroom or a scandal, but from the truth. His power was already crumbling piece by piece. And that was enough. What mattered now was who she was becoming. She ran her fingers through the wet sand, letting it cling to her hands like memory and release. This moment, this beach, this quiet, wasn't the end of her story. It was the beginning. The sound of footsteps behind her broke the silence. Lana walked up beside her, hands in her jacket pockets. You good? She asked. Amara nodded. I think so. Lana smiled. You look good. Strong. Amara looked back at the horizon. I feel strong. And for once, free. They stood together under the vast, endless sky as the sun disappeared into the sea. Amara didn't know what tomorrow would bring. But she was ready to face it, on her terms. Year had passed since Amara walked away from the glittering prison that was Damon Sterling's world. The ocean town had become her sanctuary, a place where no one whispered her name in hushed scandal, no paparazzi lurked in shadows, no suffocating expectations wrapped around her like chains. Here she was just another woman rebuilding her life, one step at a time. The memoir had become real. Titled Unveiled, The Wife Who Walked Away. It was published 3 months ago with help from Nia and a small independent press. To Amara's surprise, it soared onto bestseller lists. Not because it was scandalous, but because it was true. Letters poured in. From women. From men. From daughters who saw their mothers in her story. From strangers who said her voice had helped them find their own. She read every one. But she never responded to Damon's. He had sent 2 more letters. Apologies laced with bitterness. Regret tangled with blame. She burned them one by one without hesitation. Closure didn't come from him. Never would. Her closure had come in quiet mornings and handwritten pages, in the rhythm of the waves kissing the shore, in women who hugged her after group sessions and said, "Because of you, I left too." One crisp spring morning, she was invited to speak at a conference for survivors of domestic and emotional abuse. She stood backstage, adjusting the mic on her blouse. Her hands were calm. No trembling. No fear. When she stepped out onto the stage, the audience rose in applause. Not for a celebrity. Not for a victim. But for a woman who had turned her pain into power. She shared her story. Not just the abuse but the silence that followed. The healing. The terrifying beauty of learning to trust herself again. I was once the wife of a billionaire, she said. I had everything the world says you should want. But I had no freedom, no peace, no self-worth. I left that life behind, and I found myself. She paused, letting the room breathe. You are not broken. You're not too late. You're not too far gone. You are becoming. And that's the most beautiful thing of all. Tears shimmered in the audience. Some cried. Some clapped. All understood. Later that night, she sat on the beach with Lana and a few women from the center. They made a fire, passed warm drinks, and laughed under a sky freckled with stars. Amara leaned back in her chair, heart light, eyes on the sky. She had gone through hell, but she hadn't come out empty. She had come out whole. In the distance, the waves rolled in and pulled back. Constant, healing, endless. Full circle. And for the first time, Amara wasn't surviving. She was living.